Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to round 4 of the HRSC here at the beautiful circuit of Belgium. We're in for a great treat of both Formula A and Formula B racing together. My name is Stephen Koenig, and joining me in the box is Nicholas Helbrand, and we are in for an absolute amazing round here in Belgium. An incredibly long circuit with challenging corners, undulations up and down, and drivers having to really test their mettle. But that being said, it is only round 4 of this incredible championship, and with it being a incredibly long circuit, it's going to be a rather exciting one. Round 5, we're going to move over to the British circuit before we move over to the German Grand Prix, Mediterranean for round 7, the Italian Grand Prix for round 8, and round 9 is the Canadian Grand Prix. Last is back in the United States. A massive welcome to everyone. And a combined grid, 28 laps around the circuit. Now, 28 doesn't sound like a lot, but with the Belgian Grand Prix being extremely long, expect to utilize as much slipstream as possible. Not many of the overtaking, but are going to be focusing on carrying enough fuel to get to the very end and also to pull out those last minute passes through one another. So let's go through where we are. Challenging and always is La Source will be the corner behind you before you head down towards Radion, up towards Camel, into Les Combes, then you get into Hunt de la Côte, the Bernaville, Malmedy, then charge down to Mesta. As you get out of the tight little kink, you're going to be moving to Hollowell, into Stavelot. Le Carré will be carrying your way through, and into the dreaded Blanchemont that has gone and made life rather difficult in these cars. Before you're hard on the brakes, swing it in for the right-hander and through La Source to the checkered flag. 14 corners, 14 kilometers. Spa-Francorchamps in 1966 is always a challenge and a joy. So with that being said, we're in for an absolute stellar one. Nicholas, how are you feeling here today? And honestly, with the conditions as it stands, a little bit of a misty time for drivers to be battling their way through a very difficult circuit.
Hello there. Yes, Spa, especially the old one as we have here, one of the most challenging circuits of all time. The drivers back then, despite it being a very flowing track, we know how, there's cars, houses, people at corner entrances, apexes, and exits. So a lot of drivers back then really did not like this circuit at all. And
well, it's going to be an interesting one, I think, for the drivers having a lot of practice on the circuit, starting to realize being the front-running car is not ideal, especially on a circuit like this. The slipstream effect in both classes is incredible, and it's going to be forcing drivers to really think out of the box of where they're going to be overtaking and aiming for the lead.
Absolutely, and especially with these huge speed differences that we have in these sections here. So some of the FV cars, based on the Matra MS7 with the hugely successful Cosworth FVA engine. Some of these cars, they are around just over or just under 270 kilometers an hour for the top speed as they enter Master Kink. The Formula A cars, like the Beagle with a V12 screaming in the back, they're looking at close to 320 kilometers an hour, not 400. They produce around 400 horsepower, but they don't quite make it to that speed. But it's going to be absolutely insane. There will be a lot of overtakes, a lot of lapping, and a lot of on-track action for sure, because this is an absolute slipstream fest.
The other factor is hard braking into the corners with the drum brakes is going to make things rather difficult. Remember, these cars don't have ABS, don't have traction control. They do not have any of those fancy luxuries. They're back to grassroots racing and forcing drivers to really think out of the box. But also, getting your revs right is absolutely crucial, especially for gear changes. We go back to round 1 where we saw quite a few drivers landing up hurting their motors just by not getting the shifts right and landing up going and forcing them down through the field. So, with that being said, a couple of drivers out on the circuit and already tussles are starting to happen around here in Belgium.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to be a really, really difficult one, especially since this is the first of 3 rounds this season where we do have this joint grid format. The next 2 will, of course, be at the Nordschleife, the Green Hell, and after that at Pescara in the Italian countryside.
Oh, it's going to be an interesting one indeed, and with it going to be an absolute powerhouse. Round 4, many people tend to write off the earlier rounds, but this is actually crucial for the championship. We go back to last season where there was just a few points, like 4 points going between drivers into the final round. So we're looking forward to seeing who is going to be able to capitalize on the opportunity and move forward. We are seeing slight mistakes as drivers are starting to realize that the cars are a little bit on the loose side. They're starting to come off the sides of the circuit and making things a lot more challenging. And on a 14-kilometer circuit, one mistake sets up for a minute failure around the circuit, which is never an easy thing to recover from, especially when majority of it you're going flat out.
Absolutely, and especially the entire run up to Master King, it is one of the fastest sections in the entire, well, not just, you know, in the straight line, but also in the change of direction, and there's just walls everywhere. So you have the fences right next to the circuit. You have a house right at the exit of the corner. You had Jackie Stewart's huge accident there in 1966, after which he started his crusade for more safety. But, you know, now we are looking at 1 year further in the future. And looking at, well, Niklas Kirsten setting the pole position, Yanni Simoncic following, and Kasper Stolze in 3rd, Bert Nobs in 4th. So the 3 Beagles very well off this time. Maddie Shepard comes in 5th. Then Danny Thurman in row 3 with her. Franek Godrecki and Cedar Vaya, the next 2 Brabham cars in the 4th row. Then Martin Bayer and Jerry Ferry in 9th and 10th. Riley Wines and Matt Wright in 11th and 12th. And I'll let you do the next couple ones.
Well, it's Austin Burchard, followed by Jackson Roberlid, Ray's Gardner, and Robin DeFoss rounding out in 16th position. A little bit further down, it's Maximilian Perfecti, followed by Mayafun Fleur, do apologize. Tom D lying in 19th. Niles Sintukowicki is rounding out in 20th. Giovanni Sinstone, followed by Oli Corianti, Becky Ellie Clark, Laura Salmini going and rounding out in 24th position. Mantis Israel, followed by Yokupi D. Gentle, followed by Gerard Rain and Yuki Nara rounding out the pack.
We quickly have to skip forward here because the grid is already set. Everyone's already waiting.
An absolutely packed grid. Everyone ready to go. 28 laps and green flags waving as round 4 begins without too much carnage at the back of the field, but a brilliant start up front.
Absolutely, and a couple of the cars as well in the back of the grid. We had a few FA drivers that could not set a lap time in qualifying, but now making their way through the Formula B field already, absolutely rapid. But right now, the Beagles are leading dominant. Niklas Kirsten in the Acker Beagle in the front, followed by Yanni Simoncic in Rafa Racing Club's car. Kasper Stolze, a reserve for for Ross McGregor, who's normally driving here, in 4th place, so he'll be quite happy. Bert Nobs is holding up the flag, though, for Brabham Motorsport.
Kirsten's going and checking out nearly a second off the start. But we take a look at Jerry Ferry, now trying to make up some ground, getting a little bit overtaken. And now Ferry hoping to keep right at bay, side by side, nose to nose as they go on. But we do have a slow runner, and that's Maddie Shepard, keeping off the racing line and having the huge amount of the field coming by. Maddie not having a great start to the race in lap 1.
Absolutely. And actually, we have someone who stopped at the side, Devin Brown as well, with something happening to him. But Maddie Shepard hitting trouble earlier on and dropping down, but she seems to be able to carry on.
But taking a quick look at the replay. Oh, big spin coming up the hill and into the fence. Rear suspension damage gonna be there. Maddie Shepard having a big off out of the corner. Looked like might have clipped the dirt and sent flying. Stoltz now running in 3rd place, looking to try and take 2nd as Semenik right in front is not pulling away. Casper hoping that he can keep in the tow, pulling himself along closer and closer, trying to see maybe the inside is going to be an advantage.
Yeah, this is the difficult part, you know, actually getting into position to make the move and actually getting it done. Really, really close by right now. Stolze looking down the inside of his teammate. And now for the next corner, of course, the outside again. This is just weaving country roads through the middle of Belgium as Stolze goes through to second place.
Well, not to hold up too much time, because take a look. We've got Nops going and chasing down in third place. Had a bit of a tow and now looks to try and capitalize on the teammates. Stolze hoping to carry on the drive. Nearly 2 seconds away from Kirstein. We're going to have to be trying to close that gap rapidly. Let's take a look at the replay. This is Jonathan D going and giving it everything he's got, but unfortunately running into a few mistakes early on. A bit of a slide, trying to bring it back over the curbs. It goes, a major impact. Unfortunately, Jonathan D colliding with another vehicle into the housing, and some really, really late moves almost to the field to get on by.
Yeah, that was the vicious Master King. You know, there's just no safety zone there at all. And, you know, I think he hit the telephone pole on the outside, got a bit of a slide after the turn-in point in the change of direction, slid wide and then hit that for the other car. I think that was one of the Smart Power Racing cars. No way to go.
Just taking a monster impact. We take a look at Suru, who makes his way through. This is the final corner to just really get it going. A very, very tight right-hander as you try and put yourself back up, heading towards Radion. Another replay. This is Chris Okada running into a bit of issue. And Chris having a nice gentle drive in the 34. Unfortunately, having a bit of contact with a stray wheel. And unfortunately, that is going to be Chris out of the race, joining just the piles of rubble of single-seaters parked off on the side.
Declan Brush as well, part of that crash. Actually, I think got hit by Oliver Day's car. There was a Smile Power car that we saw take air after the hit. So, yeah, that's unfortunately 1 Formula A and 4 Formula B cars out of commission for now. But a lot of people still carrying on.
Unfortunately, the circuit unforgiving. It is challenging. And these cars, there is no room for error. Matty Shepherd trying to get a little bit of time back after a big off early on, going side by side to try and get the overtake, and does so. Petroficati going and falling down. Shepherd up into 14th, now looking to try and open the gap.
Petrovsky is actually one of the newer drivers here, so Amici lost the driver, unfortunately, due to other commitments recently. And, well, Maximilian Petrovsky had his debut at the Targa Sicilia a couple of months ago. Wasn't quite lucky and had a crash in the first lap at the humongous 72-kilometer circuit. But, well, was quite keen to keep on historic racing and is now, well, an Amici Hooper driver, and, well, was seeming quite happy, actually, to get into these cars.
I'll take a look at this. Kirstein, who went from having a 2-second gap to Stills right on the back of him. 0.3 of a second and gaining. Casper is not backing off at the moment. Really late on the brakes. You can see slight dip of the nose, carrying a lot of momentum through. Kirstein now having to go and think what is going to be the challenging way to hold the line. What does he need to do to carry the momentum? It's 28 laps, but Stills is on a mission to make it his final.
For the outside now for the first left-hand king. And this is gonna be tight. Gets it actually across. Kirsten thinking better of it there and looking instead for some slipstream. And here, look, you're basically running across that man's porch there for the apex of the corner. As we get into another one of the rare braking zones around here, down to 4th gear, slightly cut on the grass, and still exiting the corner at 230 kilometers an hour. Just showing how incredibly fast these cars in fact are and how fast this circuit is.
Yeah, and having to just counter steer well in it as well makes it rather interesting and really shows a different technique that the drivers have to pull out from usual racing, but everyone having a huge amount of fun. Quinton trying to gain a little bit of time here in 25th position, staring down at 24th just ahead, trying to gain a little bit of momentum at the moment. The Syndicate Gentleman driver hoping to improve here for round 4. has been on a little bit of a climb throughout the championship, now needing to really put the hammer down.
Absolutely. Looking for Yukanerhi's overall 24th space. Of course, it's a little bit further up ahead, so right now we have Oli Kajanlati leading Formula B, followed by Giovanni Centorame, Becky Eli Clark, Larry Salmon, Niels Senkowski, and there we are, now up one place, Quentin Chavetot getting past Yukanerhi.
After a quick visit to the dirt, Quinton now needs to go and stretch open that gap as much as possible, because all he's doing is pulling his competitor along, same as Gerald Brown, just a little bit further back in 28th position, just assisting the cars. Now I've got a question. Would you prefer to be the following car, or would you be preferring to be in front? I would say from my point of view, I'd rather chase than be chased, just purely on the fact of I get to dictate my pace to you.
I'm gonna be honest, I would honestly prefer to be the leading car here. Normally, I absolutely follow your logic here and prefer to be the following car, but around here, when we have, you know, houses right next to the circuit, telephone poles, and, you know, well, we're basically a trench to the left on our run here up to Burnhamville, it's a bit too much of a risk factor for me personally to be the following car, because if that car hits, you know, it's gonna ricochet back off. And as we saw on lap 1, that could be right into you.
Unfortunately, multiple DNFs due to just varying incidents. Bert Knops going and making up a bit of time, chasing down likes of Simonek just ahead. But take a look, we got Vidro chasing in 5th place. 4th, 3rd, and 5th are all within sight of one another. And Bayer is also making up a bit of time as well during the course of this race. So we're starting to see little builds up of trains happening all around the circuit as drivers are trying to push that little bit further. Bert getting a massive tank slapper, slides the car around, brings it right to the fringe of the circuit. He is absolutely sending it from start to finish and really wants to be on that podium.
Absolutely, and you know, Bert Knops, one of those guys for Brabham. Actually, the interesting part about this, we're simulating the 1967 F1 season. Of course, these cars are an homage to the real cars, but nevertheless, we still have Brabham Motorsport running here in, well, the actual cars that they did run in that season. And this, of course, was the debut in real life, and as it is here for the BT24. So, Cedar Vire, Bert Knops, 4th and 5th right now. They are down on power, but not down on pace, evidently.
As long as you can keep the pressure on, that's the main thing. Try and keep your opponent looking in the mirrors continuously, trying to figure out what you're going to do. Darren Andrews got a little bit more room to play with. Austin Birchfield, however, has got the opposite as he's getting chased down at the moment. The number 17 driver needing to really figure out what to do. DeFoss hoping to gain a little bit of momentum here and is properly closing up on the back. Sorry, this is Austin Birchfield chasing down Perfectly just ahead. So Birchfield waits on the brakes, tries to get as close as he can to the grass, and really putting the hammer down. The Southern Speed Factory driver not going to be slowing up at all. Counter steering, just trying to keep the car in check, and is really risking it for biscuit at the moment. Birchfield is not waiting for any loss of pace here. He wants to get into that 13th position, and is going to do everything he can to make it happen.
It's Austin Birchfield, one of the bad luck drivers from last round. Had a big off in his brand new British 49 with the V8 DFV engine. Unfortunately, critically damaged the car, so it wasn't available for this round. So he's back in his trusty British 43 with an absolutely humongous, you can see it in the back with the 4 exhaust pipes, H16 engine, as he's trying to find that gap past Petravki, who's there with his Mazzantini V12 powered Hooper.
Late on the brakes and looks like going a little bit too late into the corner. There we go. There's the pass. Austin waited for it. Got it done and dusted. Tucked in. Perfectly going and losing out too much on the brakes. And now has to play a little bit of catch up as they charge up Radeon. This is going to be an absolute run for Austin to keep it all in check.
And we actually, just speaking of... well, there was something going on because we just lost Cedar Vire as well, who was running at the front, but there was, oh my goodness, that was at the approach to La Source. out of Clubhouse Corner, and oh, just ripped off a rear wheel just at the beginning of... there was a guardrail there, yeah, just really, really unlucky. I touched the wall at the worst moment. And, you know, that is the big difference between, you know, nowadays purpose-built racetracks and, well, what we had back in the day. You know, these were, well, brutally said, you know, these were just country roads. Just nothing else. You know, you were lucky that they had a couple of barriers basically blocking the route, so normal traffic wouldn't be on the track as well. But yeah, that's a big one.
Unfortunately, when like Icarus flew too close to the sun and landed up in big trouble. Giovanni going and keeping up a solid impact now, running in 18th position and just trying to keep consistent in pace. Giovanni, for the last little while, you can see keeping away from the fringes of the circuit, maybe a little bit wary of not pushing a little bit too hard. Does lose out a position, however, and Giovanni now needs to try and reclaim that 18th position as he does close up a huge amount of space. Flat on the gas in the slipstream, no way to overtake as yet. We'll have to try and think out of the box here. What can be done?
It's this really, really almost hypnotizing section after Burnhamville, you know, going through that up and down as it's almost like a roller coaster. As now we have Gentarame on the back of the leader, getting past slowly bit by bit, 267 kilometers an hour, and he's trying to move over, not quite get space, but now there's the space and ready to take Master King.
Oh, Giovanni making it a big power play there. Becky L. Clark going and making some moves as well, trying to play a little bit of catch-up. Down in 22nd position as we go around the circuit. You can still see the houses parked on the side. Crowd members going and waiting with anticipation, hearing the roar of these beautiful classic single-seaters go through the countryside. And I've got to say, nothing better than going and seeing classics racing on the old circuits, going and showing what they can do. Drivers doing everything they can to show motorsport how it was back in the day and bringing it to our current times and showing how much fun they actually are when you start throwing away the wings, you throw away the TC, the fancy brakes, all of it, and you go back to grassroots racing.
In this point of time, we essentially were barely less than 10 years out of drum brake era, basically. So, you know, this is still very early technology. I mean, brake failures are also a thing here. So if the drivers, you know, they have to make accommodations here with the setups, of course, especially in the Formula A cars, you have to put the proper setup work in before these Grand Prix. We had multiple people. So Riley Wines, for example, had a brake blowout in round one, was able to go on because it was only one of his rear brakes, and was able to nurse the car back home with that. So it's so many challenges these guys have. Kayalati going back through again, so he and Gentarame are still swapping positions back and forth for the lead of the Formula B race.
Well, the Kayalati just having a little bit more momentum through some of the faster corners, but doesn't seem to have the top end. Kayalati hoping to try and keep the momentum, but you can see the rear stepping up quite a bit, not as comfortable, losing out a lot of drive. And this is going to have Giovanni immediately putting the pressure back on. Under braking, a huge difference as Giovanni gets right underneath that gearbox and now looks to put the pressure on as they look to complete lap 5, moving on to lap 6.
And, well, we are basically just, you know, it doesn't look like much with 28 laps, but, and, well, overall it doesn't feel like much either, since, you know, we're seeing them basically at such high speeds for the whole lap. But don't be fooled, thanks to this circuit being absolutely humongous, 14.1 kilometers per lap, with it being so fast, we're still doing, I think, around 400 kilometers around this circuit for this Grand Prix. So also this old 1960s Grand Prix distance, like we had it 2 rounds ago for Monaco as well, the last race that was run there for the lap distance at 100 laps. And, well, after that, basically, they made the race shorter because we also had this, in 1967, obviously, the terrible fatal accident of Lorenzo Bandini, which I actually managed to barely escape because I almost crashed at the exact same spot in the exact same car. But, yeah, his guardian spirit protected me back then.
We've got the likes of Ertnobs trying to make up some time, lying in 4th place. Simonik just ahead of him, trying to close up the gap. And I've got to say, one thing about sim racing, especially in these classic cars, is it brings out the endurance of drivers mentally and physically, because driving straight is not actually with these cars. You're constantly making small movements on the steering wheel, trying to put it in every direction you want it to go. The road bumps are making things rather challenging, but also mentally, you are having to really think out of the box. You have to start thinking about every split second what you're going to do, getting your revs right, getting your changes right, making sure your lines are correct. And once you start going through the field, you're going to be in a bit of a challenge. And like for Bertnops at the moment, who's aiming for Simonek just ahead of him, they will also be starting to look through cutting at the back of the field. That's also going to make things rather difficult, as our Formula A drivers will go and close up at a rate of knots, as we just saw, to our Formula B.
Absolutely, and that was our first, one of our first Formula B cars getting lapped there. So Fandango hit trouble a bit early on, I think. Very, very unfortunate, of course, but still going strong. And we've seen in these last couple of races already, you sometimes just have to keep going and just, never stop believing, so to say. Just make it to the finish and you can still get a decent result. Best example would be Mefan with Fleur in Sanford last round, finishing in 4th place after, being a bit off pace, but, more importantly, keeping it on the circuit and not succumbing to the dunes.
Well, we got to see Jackson Robollard unfortunately stopped off on the side of the circuit and having to call it a day. That's unfortunate. Dropping down the order, was in 15th and now will be tumbling down as a DNF. A gutting to blow here at lap 6 of 28. Round 4 of Belgium right here in the HSRC. So a bit of a gutting blow there. Ollie hoping to gain a little bit of time. Now I've got a very good question. As we're starting to see more and more cars fading off, the grid's getting a little bit smaller, a lot of the sim racers will start to worry about it as well. What do they need to do to ensure that they get finished, as Ollie getting very close to dropping off the side of the mountain. Ollie hoping to try and get a pass done. Unfortunately, didn't work out in his favor. But going back to it, looking back at everyone, is this going to start getting into the drivers' heads of, listen, I can make crucial mistakes and I'm going to lose out a lot here?
Yeah, that is the thing, everyone is in this open wheeler mindset. Otherwise, we had a lot of sports car racing, so a lot of people more used to 3 to 6 hour distances. Now this is 1.5 to 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours on the longer Grand Prix. But drivers, of course, still, we're in an open wheeler, we have to get on top of the pace, and obviously we have to push to keep up with the others. So a lot of people getting caught out by that, getting a slight mistake, getting a slight slide done, and just hitting the wall there. And, well, just like that, Petrovsky just having a big off there as well, just at the exit of the chicane after Burnhamville.
Laurie trying to carry a little bit of momentum, looking for a position gain. Lying in 18th position at the moment, but we've also got the likes of Petrovsky going and falling down the order. Something happened, and now going to be tumbling way down. Quite a few of our drivers landing up with a bit of a problem. Here's Maximilian, and see what happened to him. Carrying a lot of momentum, big tank slapper coming out, incredible pace, was able to save it. Late on the brakes, got unsteady into the grass, into the fence line, and off into the distance. Maximilian not going to be happy with that one. Oh, and on fly. That, unfortunately, I think it's pretty much toast.
Yeah, ruptured a fuel tank, and I think for the next round, that will have to be the backup car. So one of the big things here as well that drivers have to keep in mind, of course, if they crash it here, if they crash it heavy enough in the Formula A cars, well, if you lose 2 wheels or you lose a rear wheel and the engine, that's basically counted as a chassis being broken and unavailable for the next race. So they have, for that case, they have backup cars, either like in the case for the British cars, they have the H16 powered car that Austin Birchfield is driving right now because of this exact occasion happening to him last round. Or, alternatively, they have, one of these Formula 2 chassis here, but with upscaled engine, modeled after, the 2.5 liter Climax FPF Tasman engine and the 2.8 liter not Tasman, but IndyCar engine that was also based on the FPF, because there was just so much insanity in racing back in the day when they were switching to 1.5 to 3 liter, and yeah, it's just something. If anyone is interested in these kinds of topics, anyone interested in the technicalities of all this stuff, it is always worth having a read about this time in racing, because purely with all of the shenanigans people did to try and build new engines, get more pace out of the car, it was absolutely insane.
We got to also talk about fuel tanks. We usually know fuel tanks behind the driver in a bag tank. Back in this era, however, there was aluminium tanks that were on the sides towards the front of the driver, and when you needed to run longer tracks or longer laps, you had a central tank that literally comes over the top of the driver's legs. So not only have you got a fuel tank left and right of you, you've got one that comes over the top of you, beautifully molded in beautiful aluminium, but also makes things rather tricky when they get punctured. So just having to really drive these cars on edge to really show what they can do. You're taking big risks, and it's a huge momentum for safety. At this time as well was the early introduction of roll hoops that were coming into the cars. Guys weren't too concerned about, well, necks flailing about, but unfortunately, as we know, it has become a massive, massive issue to land on your head. So roll hoops were introduced, and they weren't quite the strongest. They were there to sort of stop things, but unfortunately did have a habit of bending.
And as we have, for example, Bert Knobs here, who just managed to make it through Master once more, now through Hollowell and Stavolo. One of the big parts, where this actually ties in, having this fuel tank situation with the fuel tanks all around you, with this circuit being as fast as it is. 1966, when they also filmed the Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer movie Grand Prix there, huge downpour in the first lap. Jackie Stewart loses control of his BRM and actually flies through the wall of a shed, ruptures the fuel tanks, and lies upside down, basically helpless for multiple minutes while having fuel pour over him, until Jack Brabham and another driver actually were able to get a toolkit from the back of the truck of one of the spectators there. You have to get that in your head, to fully comprehend that. That was still the pinnacle of motorsport back then. And, they were basically reliant on spectators having something like toolkits and stuff.
It's just absolutely incredible of the racing in the day. And honestly, how we get to live those moments here in the 21st century, and especially with the HRSC, going and bringing history in motion. We're bringing back all the amazing feats, and also getting to experience these cars and tracks long forgotten to time.
Exactly. I mean, nowadays with Spa, you can still drive over the old Grand Prix circuit for most of the distance, which is, well, it's a quite cool and nostalgic feeling. I did that actually recently when I was at the Spa 6 Hours this year. But, it's, you still notice, like, for a couple of circuits, they still also have, like, old advertisement boards up at old track sections, Reims Show. And, oh, that's Giovanni Santarame! That's from the lead of Formula B, and I think that's also Master King. Yes, it is.
Fortunately, Giovanni's race come to a close in a monster impact. Quinton getting the run to try and gain a position, and does so. So it is going all around in chaos, and we're starting to see more and more changes. Unfortunately, drivers pushing it a little too far, and cars just not lasting the impact. This is going to be a race of nutrition. Let's take a look at the replay and see what happened to Giovanni. So gaining some time, closing up a little bit of airtime, all onto the grass, into the foam. Oh, and monster impact. That is a chassis completely gone.
Yeah, that is absolutely monstrous accident. And Quentin Chavetot now, again, is defending against Matthias Estrella, who's obviously very, very keen on, well, getting back that position. And, yeah, that is, they're still racing quite clean, quite close. Everyone's very, very close together right now still, especially in Formula B. And overall, I mean, with these race cars, there is a lot more of a construction difference from car to car, especially in Formula A here, where, we have the power outputs varying wildly. We have the weight of the car varying wildly. Formula B has the advantage. They are, you know, about the same weight, everyone, all of the same cars, all the same engine, around 444 kilos curb weight. So curb weight is basically with all fluids except for fuel and without the driver. So, yeah, it's very, very light car, I'd say. Up to 120 liters of fuel in that car as well, so all around the driver once again. But with Formula A, the F1 regulations back then, 500 kilos minimum curb weight with a 3-liter naturally aspirated engine or a 1.5-liter supercharged engine. Back then, no one started to even attempt supercharged engines, but the engine concepts back then, very, very wild in difference and in concepts. For example, our race leaders in the Beagle, Kasper Stolze, Niklas Kirsten, and Diane Simencic, with a classic V12 4 valves per cylinder, producing now around 400 horsepower at around 10,500 to 11,000 RPM. Curb weight around 580 kilos, so a little bit on the heavier side, but still quite a lot lighter than, let's say, for comparison, with the H16. And yes, I did not make a mistake, the H16 engine from the GBR and the British 43. So these were all basically built after the BRM P83 and the Lotus 43. With the BRM H16 engine, they basically thought, 1965, we have a good working 1.5-liter V8 engine. Let's just put 2 of those together. And yeah, well, right now we are making around 220 horsepower with that, so we should get at least 450 out of it. Unfortunately, that engine was incredibly heavy. They needed, I think, when it arrived first at Lotus HQ in 1966, there's the story that they needed 5 men to lift it off the truck with the entire assembly there. And yeah, only unfortunately 360 horsepower at first, then they slowly got it up to 400 to 420. Here it's producing 420 horsepower, but a very, very narrow rev band. So besides that, also a very heavy car, close to 700 kilos. So 200 kilos over the minimum weight, like what Darren Andrews is driving here, one of the GBR P83s. But this is also the first track where that car can properly stretch its legs. 6-speed gearbox, unlike all of the other cars in this grid, except for the British as well, since same engine, same drive shaft. Oh, well, drive line basically, taking the gearbox from BRM as well. They just realized it's too narrow of a rev band to run in a 5-speed gearbox. And these cars here, it's all about just keeping it in the rev band, keeping it all about the power window that you have. So a really, really tricky situation here, of course, for these drivers, as we have Darren Andrews going around La Source now all over the back of Robin DeVos for 12th place overall. And Darren Andrews, of course, is one of the 2 drivers that was running at the back of the Formula B grid. That's DeVos actually heading into the pit lane. And if you're thinking, well, that is mighty fast for the pit lane, even if it doesn't have a wall, well, pit lane speed limits, believe it or not, were only introduced in 1994. And no, I did not make a mistake there. That was actually genuinely when they were introduced. It is completely crazy. I heard a crash just now, and I think, yeah, that is Tom D. That is Tom D at the beginning of Eau Rouge. Actually, oh, hits both sides of the bridge. Once again, very, very unlucky. We are having a quick replay of that here. So we have him going down there. Tom D, also one of the guys that had to, well, not run one of his, well, his actual 3-liter Falvero, or well, Scarini 31267. I think everyone is quite understanding which this brand is supposed to be. And yeah, unfortunately, that is both wheels gone, so it'll pain him in his heart not to be able to take the F2 car for the next round. Steff Hermann's now the next DNF, so a lot of people already falling victim as we're slowly approaching the halfway point of the race. Getting a quick replay of that as well. That is, yeah, that is just at the Carrière. Getting a bit wide on the grass there, and the tank stopper comes there. And that is one of the telephone poles once again, and that is 2 wheels gone on the front. Luckily, we don't have, well, bodily injuries like here, because that could have been very, very ugly in real life. But here we are with Riley Wyans, and he is followed by his Southern Speed Factory teammate, Austin Birchfield, both of them powered by H16 cars. Riley Wyans by the GBR P83 and Austin Birchfield by the British 43. Austin, of course, running, well, since it is, you know, not a works car, understandably, because BRM delivered them as customer engines to Lotus. He only has a customer engine, so this version of the H16 only producing 405 horsepower, but that is not stopping him. Birchfield's very, very comfortable. Said it multiple times before, you know, the car is heavy as all heck, but you have a lot of traction because over half of the weight is focused on the rear of the car. You just have so much weight putting down on the rear axle. It's awful for overheating if you over push the car a bit too much, but it's still very, very good just overall for balance, and also when you have constant weight on the rear axle in case it starts slightly raining, which could be a chance today. Looking towards the front though, that's number 5 of Bert Knobs, the last remaining Brabham driver. And all over the back of Jane Simoncic. You can see here once again this weight difference coming into play here. Simoncic has around 65 horsepower more peak power output than Knobs, but one of the big things about this brand new Brabham BT24, it is just over the minimum weight gap, which is around 517 kilos for this car. So around 63 kilos less, and well, 65 horsepower less peak power on a wider rev band though, because V8 obviously bigger cylinders producing a bit more torque at this point, and also revving a little bit lower since bigger cylinders, as we have a slight excursion into how an engine works. But yeah, you can see that once again, you know, on the straight, that Beagle is stretching its legs, making all of its power known, giving a little bit of slipstream to Bert Knobs. But no, Bert Knobs also still all over the back of him, not willing to drop too far behind. And here once again on the brakes, getting so much closer, closing 2/10 there, closing 3/10, 4/10 from the 1.1 seconds earlier, and able to get on the throttle just that tad bit earlier. And keeps up with him again, just barely inside of the slipstream for the next straight. So it's all about survival here, you know, playing into the strengths of your cars. And obviously with this calendar, of course, we had a lot of tracks here where, well, lower weight, lower power cars have been, you know, fairly competitive, you know, like the Grabhams, for example. East London, not too long of a straight there. Then we had Monaco, obviously not very long straights there. Then we had Sanford, also not very long straights there, even though Devin Browner was already struggling quite a bit there with the lack of power. Back then with the BT20, 85 horsepower difference compared to Jane Simoncic's Beagle. But he prevailed anyway and managed to win that race. Now Bert Knobs once again through the run here through Blanchimont on his way now to Clubhouse Corner. Long right-hand kink, and we're coming up to the section where his teammates had to stop his car terminally for this race. And look at that, yeah, that gap in the barrier there, very, very vicious. So we see another car there up front. That is one of the Formula B cars that's coming up to be lapped. So Lassour's a little bit more of a drop than there is nowadays, I would say. He looks a lot more elevated. A lot of reprofiling done, obviously, here. They even built in the 80s the, you know, fully permanent circuit that we all know and love nowadays. And Bert Knobs getting all over the back of Simoncic now through the run, through Rouge and Radion there. But now up the hill, you know, especially there, you're fighting against gravity, and the overweight of the Eagle is getting, well, overpowered by the literal power difference from the Eagle compared to Knobs. Yes, they're both now making their way into Le Combe. Coming out of there now on the long runs again. Haute de la Côte, the next chicane here. And that is Danny Verman actually for the next pit stop. So that must have been damage as well. Everyone's slowly getting caught out here. One of the weeks, that is, not quite the 100% historic experience here. We have a slightly different calendar than in real life back then. Mainly because we also don't have Watkins Glen in the simulation, unfortunately. So instead we'll have Riverside finishing off this season. Then after that, besides that, we also have a slightly bigger point system. Back then only top 6 points. Here we have the top 8. So the winner, everyone getting a bit more points. Eighth place is 1 single point left, and Matt Wright, just getting his BT20 for the first race, was very patient in enduring the F2 chassis for the first couple of rounds in this season. Now looking at not his first point, but his first point in the BT20 after he finally received it. But Austin Birchfield still chasing him hard. The absolute power to weight ratio and, power difference of, 105 horsepowers coming to bear here. Birchfield getting close to 290 kilometers an hour there. But the BT20 is also only 538 kilos compared to the GBR's 694. So anyone who likes doing quick math is very welcome to do that. It's almost 160 kilos. And, that is pretty much over 2 drivers. Back in the day, even maybe close to 3 drivers in weight difference. H16 still screaming its neck off, as they're now approaching Master King again, and you can see that slight jink there. The gap gets bigger for just a moment, as Birchfield has to lift off a little bit more, has to slow down that humongous car a slight bit more than Matt Wright. Matt Wright able to carry a bit more speed into the corner. Now we're looking straight over the roll bar right behind the purple helmet of Austin Birchfield. Takes some grass on the inside to make the corner, and oh, that is a big one on the outside. That's Rhys Gardner. That's Rhys Gardner out of the race. That is a huge accident. And that's both rear tires gone, and the engine is on fire. And at the front tire as well. That was an absolutely humongous off. I hope we can get a replay for that. So absolutely incredible stuff here at the almost halfway point of the race. There we have the replay now, and that is Rhys Gardner. Now that's Hollowell he's approaching. Into Holloway, and oh, just clips. Yeah, just clips the wall on the side, flips, and into the crowd, into the car park there. As he hits the wall, and the oil tank on the rear of the car explodes into a fiery inferno. Oh, the humanity. Luckily, this is just in the simulation. But that is a very, very big accident. Yeah, so there's no such thing as a small off around this track, I think. Well, absolutely humongous, and there we can see the difference there. Matt Wright trying to put more power down, also having a bit more torque, obviously, than the tiny cylinders in that H16. Not also, not as much weight on the rear axle, having a big power side, and Austin Birchfield just rotates the car around, goes, well, here I go with my right foot. Puts the power down, and the H16 follows suit. Nevertheless, Matt Wright still hanging on to the back of him. And keeping it close, keeping it real. We have Olli Karjanlahti and Nils Sankovski. Actually, Nils Sankovski here now a little bit further up ahead. That's behind Larry Salmon, and that should be the lead for the Formula B class. That is indeed the lead for the Formula B class. Still a slipstream fest between them. Going through the back of the track there, La Carrière. So this entire section of corners here is La Carrière. They run back to the Blanchimont, the clubhouse corner. They're now on the final straight before Blanchimont. Also very, very much different than it used to be back in the day. But yeah, this is basically now a road where you're approaching, at nowadays, Stavelot. And, oh, that's Chaberteau. Chaberteau is out as well, so the next one falling victim to that is 5th place in the Formula B class. So that is basically, well, a freebie for Gerard Rion, who's still running behind him, 40 seconds behind. So now we have only the top 4, I mean top 5, 6, 7, 8. So we just have 8 people running. If they basically just back off now and just finish the race, that's basically guaranteed points for them. Chaberteau, so that, I think that looks like, yeah, that should be, oh, that's Zakaria, and actually, yeah, that gets slightly caught on the side of the road there, so hits a slight bump there, spins off to the left side, and hits the telephone pole there, completely shatters the car. Completely insane. Somehow this was one of the more meek, more tame incidents today, which is pretty crazy to think about. But yeah, we're looking back towards the front. Bert Nobs, Yannis Simoncic, the fight is up once again. We had them lapping through traffic. A bit behind that, you can also see Martin Bayer trying to make his way past the next couple of Formula B cars as they're entering Le Combe once again. And once more, really, really close looking between those two drivers. You can see on that short straight just how long the gap has stretched itself from Simoncic. And now you can see the gap fly back down as Nobs can just carry a couple of kilometers an hour through the entirety of Bournonville. More than Simoncic with this weight difference that we have present here. Simoncic trying to struggle to keep the car with the grip, trying to fight against the centrifugal forces and against the grip limit that his tires can provide. But now back opens it up again. All 48 valves of that 12-cylinder engine, you know, fluttering away. Well, ideally not fluttering, because valve flutter is a serious problem, but I was struggling to find the right verb there. Is it noticeable that I'm not a main English speaker yet? But nevertheless, you know, widens the gap once again. Salmonen, meanwhile, right behind Sankovsky now. In the background, we also have, I think that is Kirsten approaching, because that looks to me like a Beagle in the Amber Collective Autosport colors, and that is indeed Niklas Kirsten. So he's coming up, the second place driver overall is coming up to lap, first and second in Formula B, so they have to just mind themselves, stay predictable, and obviously keep fighting, and Kirsten can just fly around the outside and keep on going with his business. Humongous speed differences we're seeing here. If you're wondering, well, would Formula 1 and Formula 2 ever race on the same circuit? It was actually quite normal back in the day for the German Grand Prix. So this is a format that was, for this league, basically, you know, we have a circuit that's long enough. We have it again at, well, quite literally the German Grand Prix for the Nürburgring, and we have it for Pescara for the Mediterranean Grand Prix. Even though technically Adriatic Sea Grand Prix, but close enough, it's basically an arm of the Mediterranean as well, and it can't be the Italian Grand Prix since we're going there for Monza. Once again, though, now we have actually the battle we were watching just a second ago catching up to the lead battle here. So P3 and P4 for Formula A coming up close behind Formula B. Robin de Vos also DNFing now as we're turning our heads to look this way. Yannis Simoncic late on the brakes, makes it down the inside of Lari Salminen. But Nobs tries to get the same gap, but can't quite make it in the middle of the corner. Now just flying past there, still having around 110 horsepower more than the Formula B car. And Nils Sankovsky, very, very narrow into that old version of Eau Rouge. Still going over the narrow stone bridge, basically. That already claimed a couple of victims this weekend. We have Robin DeVos, that is Burnhamville. Getting carried a bit wide, very, very wide, and that is into one of those parked cars. That inhabitant will not be very happy when he wakes up in the morning the next day and tries to drive to work. I do wonder how you would, address that, with your boss. You would probably call, like, through the landline and go, hey, hello, boss, I cannot come into work today. I know this will sound like I'm faking an illness or something, but a race car obliterated my car parked in my driveway. Though in fairness, that the boss would probably know that he's living at Spa and just goes, okay, understandable, have a nice day. That is, unfortunate. But yeah, no issues like that as Salminen and Sankovsky navigate Burnhamville. Now over the crest, over that roller coaster section here through the chicane. Once again, big run with the Slipstream, and from behind comes Martin Beyer in 5th place overall. Coming around the outside, and my goodness me, just look at that overspeed. That's what almost twice the displacement and almost twice the power looks like. Once more, navigating it through Master King now. Larry Salminen still holding firm. You can see the Slipstream slowly closing and closing, going over 270 kilometers now just before braking for Hollowell. Going past the site where Rhys Gardner had a huge crash. Now through the old Stavolo, slightly banked corner. So having a quick look at Kasper Stolzer, he's getting the Lewis Hamilton treatment of quickly having a look at the leader that is basically driving in his own dimension. Stolzer basically came in this week as a replacement for McGregor and, also a fan of historic cars, just jumping in and, running his race, like Ross McGregor did in the Trans Am series when he did the same thing when he was being a replacement driver for Jasper Pedersen. So Rafa Racing Club and replacement drivers having a debut excellent race. That is a very iconic duo here. But, as we just mentioned, Stavolo and the demise point of one of our drivers, here we have the driver of one of the heaviest cars and also, lucky not a burn victim of this race, Rhys Gardner. How are you doing, man?
I would say that I was a bit of a burn victim. My car definitely was set alight when I ran into the car. I just want to finish a race. That's how I feel.
Overall, I think what was the biggest challenge preparing for this race over here? I mean, this was obviously one of the first tracks for the season that plays more into the, I'd say more into the strengths for the GBR. Actually, having longer straights where the engine can stretch its legs. Now with the car being completely obliterated, you'll be back into the FB car with the 2-liter 4-cylinder engine for Silverstone, which shouldn't be too bad overall. But then after that, you are in the actual upgraded car, the P83M, dropping like 60-65 kilos. Are you looking forward to that?
Yes, I am. I honestly, I think this is a blessing in disguise because I can finally say goodbye to this heavy, lumbering pig of a car. I've been through so much frustration trying to get this thing driving the way I want to, not being able to use its real strengths at a lot of the tracks so far. But the thing that hurts the most about this round is in the lead up, and you were here with us on Discord, Nick, when it happened. Yeah. Darren gave me his setup that he was using for the same car, and it completely transformed it for me. I was finally at a point where this car was driving how I wanted it to, and it's all ruined by me just straightening up the wheel like a tenth of a second too soon at Hollowell. Like, I reviewed it, and I just caught the end of the wall with the left rear. That was all that happened.
Yes, incredibly bad luck in that situation. So, overall, like, what's the plan for tackling the next round then? You know, it's Silverstone, so we have... Well, it's more the airfield circuit. You made a video about that, you know, so guys, if you are also interested in race car history and race circuit history, you know, you check out his channel, Southpaw Racer. He made a very interesting video about the development of Silverstone over the years. We had one of the very bare bones layouts still, like very early on in the race.
Yeah, indeed. The video that I made was about Zandvoort. I am still working on the Silverstone one, but
you're
it's
still working on Silverstone. Yeah, sorry.
Yes, it's going to be a good one though. It's going to be a very good one. I'm looking forward to eventually releasing it. But yeah, my plan for the next round is to just survive. I'm not expecting anything out of it. At least there's less stuff for me to hit at Silverstone, so I should at least be able to make it to the finish. Whether or not it's in the points remains to be seen. But yeah, I think I'm just gonna black out for Silverstone and wait for Nürburgring, because that's where I'm gonna get the GBR back, and thankfully it's gonna be lighter.
Absolutely, one big upgrade coming your way for that round, and then for the following rounds as well. I mean, Pescara will probably be your strongest circuit. Are you looking forward to that?
Absolutely. I've had my eyes on that the whole season so far. Every time I've crashed out, I've been like, just think of Pescara. Just think of that straight where you can get up to like 325 k's an hour with no draft. Like, oh, it's going to be great. Hopefully I can keep it out of the buildings, though.
Should be all fine. I mean, we don't have, like, you know, too many sections there where it's, well, wall all of a sudden. I mean, Cedar Vaya as well, you know, we lost him at Clubhouse earlier, basically hitting the wall on the outside and then getting dragged right up to the wall. And then there's a gap in the guardrail that just rips off the rear tire, you know, ends the race there. Just a really, really difficult situation here, because, you know, also with all these telephone poles on the side, you know, there's so much of a hazard there. But quite honestly, with our nowadays, you know, with our, you know, born in the 1990s brains, you know, I don't think any one of us can really comprehend that they actually raced there back in the day.
Yeah, definitely. Like, just looking at the layout of Pescara, it's a track that you would never see in modern racing. And I think even for the 1950s, it was very old school. You know, it has those vibes of like of the open road circuits they used to race at in the 20s and 30s. So it'll be good to see how the GBR performs there, and I'll just be kicking back on the straights and hoping that I've got a good enough traction out of the corner, and yeah, that'll be it for me.
Absolutely. Looking forward to a good day in the Italian countryside. I mean, yeah. I think one of the best parts is, you know, actually looking into why certain racetracks were discontinued, you know. Usually it is, you know, oh, for safety, and it's like, yep, that makes sense. There's a spectator on the corner apex. I can understand why this is no longer being used, but for Pescara, one of the reasons was legitimately they could not, like, for ticket sales, they could not really regulate it who was attending the race, because the circuit was just so long, because it's a 25-kilometer circuit just through the villages and stuff. And they couldn't, you know, take ticket prices for everyone, because you just have, you know, for example, a couple of friends from another town coming over to Pescara, staying with someone in the village, and basically, oh, you want to watch the race? Open the window, you know, they're driving through my town.
Man, I wish things were like that now. That'd be amazing. Well, regardless, that trio of Nürburgring, Pescara, and Brianza as well, the GBR will be very good there too in October. Potentially Mosport's going to be a good round for it as well. Very, very high speed. But yeah, this I need to start scoring some points, because I've clearly got the pace to do so.
Absolutely. I mean, always running very well. I mean, we can also see Austin Birchfield and Riley Wines in similar cars, you know, in 7th and 8th right now, actually just in front of your teammate, who did a very good job actually trying to overcome that around 90 to 110 horsepower deficit that he was having compared to the two H16 runners. And, you know, he's still quite close behind that, but yeah, on the long straights, there's not really much you can do. The power just outweighs the weight difference there.
Yeah, absolutely. But Matt's doing really good. I think he's very happy that he finally has a car that's properly competitive, and I'm hoping that he can bring home some more points for Ecurie Australis. Thus far, you know, I've been the one with the faster car generally over the course of the season, and I haven't done diddly squat with it. Meanwhile, while he was still running the F Formula B chassis, he managed to grab a 5th at Zandvoort after I crashed out. So he's carrying us at the moment.
I mean, you know, it's teamwork in the end, you know. It's you're there for moral support.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm the one who's going to need some moral support after this.
It'll be all fine. You know, after Silverstone, you're getting the new car. I mean, for round 6, Matt is also getting the new spec engine for the BT20, so...
Yes.
Should be double nice.
Certainly should be. He is hoping.
And yeah, we're watching here the 7-speed factory guys still relatively comfy running along. I think they're basically doing the same tactic as Toyota was doing in the Le Mans 24 Hours when they didn't have any competitors immediately around them. Just try to slipstream, try to save some fuel, and just, you know, one or the other, you know, they're just switching positions every now and then. I mean, they also had a couple of very difficult races. I mean, Austin Birchfield obviously was supposed to be in the 49 today with a, you know, very, very powerful British V8 engine with a 370 horsepower spec for the beginning of the season. And yeah, touched a slight dune at Zandvoort and exploded into said dune.
Yeah, for sure. These tracks are very treacherous, but I think it might be just about time for me to wind down for the night and start getting this adrenaline out of me somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for taking part, of course, as always, and, you know, coming in to have a chat as well.
All right, have a good one, guys. Have a good show, and yeah, hopefully we see a good amount of finishes. It's been a bit of a race of attrition so far.
Yeah, see you at the track in 3 weeks.
All right, catch you at Silverstone.
Right, and with that, well, we are basically by ourselves again, looking still at the 2 H16 powered ones after one of their brothers, unfortunately, here with us in the commentator booth way too early, as they're maneuvering their way around the Formula B car of Clem Fandango, and Austin Birchfield gets slightly caught out there. Fandango just trying to stay on the right-hand side, and I think Birchfield thinking that he was going to move to the middle of the track, but yeah, that is one of these moments, you know, where you have... I was going to say, yeah, the lower regions in your throat. And, ooh, speaking of lower regions in your throat, we can't quite see it there, but there's some tire smoke. Riley Wines with a very, very big slide through the middle of that roller coaster-like section. Austin Birchfield goes back through again. So 7-speed switching positions once more, somehow keeping it out of the wall and very, very carefully curating himself to stay on the circuit. We saw a lot of people end their race there already. These two are, well, the closest cars we have on circuit right now, except for, we can see it down there in 13th and 14th, Sankowski and Salminen. They're still in their battle for the overall, well, for the Formula B lead overall. There we are. Still slipstreaming. The battle has never ended, even when we were interviewing Mr. Gardner, even when we were looking at, well, the 2 GBR-powered cars following each other. But here we have another one. That's Chaz Carla from Beauville Engineering, Formula B. Chaz also had quite promising pace in a couple of the rounds so far already, but I think, yeah, that too hot into Blanchimont, and, oh, that is the front wheel ripped off. That is an early day out for Mr. Carla, unfortunately. And I don't think that is quite yet in the points area for this race. Yeah, after lap 21, so when people have completed 21 laps and then crash it, then they will be able to be scoring points even if they retire. Because you score points after covering 75% of the race distance. Yeah, now we have 10 laps to go now. Well, 9, well, also 10 laps, but, you know, they already got lapped in Formula B. So they can also carry the luxury of around 4 liters less fuel with them. We have another look here at Kasper Stolze. No slip-ups at all throughout this entire race so far. Driving a perfect race coming from, well, the second row. Oh, actually, I think, yeah, he out-qualified Simoncic, his main season counterpart. And actually running very, very confidently, you know. So Stolze also one of the HRSC veterans that was put on by Jake from GP Labs back in the 1950s sports cars. In, I want to say 2022, if I remember correctly. Which is getting to a point, you know, where you realize how quickly time is passing nowadays. Because that's also been quite a while now. But yeah, I'm going to be quiet for a moment just so we can hear this absolutely screaming V12 made in the USA. Now, once again, coming out of La Source. Back in the day, the final corner of the circuit instead of the first one. They've since, you know, constructed an entire new pit straight on the upper side where the clubhouse corner is. Yeah, once again, going into Rouge and Radio, really, really tight here after all. And, well, you know, just, I don't know what else to say, you know, he's done a perfect race so far, you know, overpowering everyone with raw pace. His best lap only getting beaten slightly, so the three Beagles basically being within 0.2 of a second with their fastest laps. Fastest lap right now being held by Simoncic with a 3:30.069. Then Kasper Stolze with a 3:32.40, and then Niklas Kirsten with a 30.264. So absolutely incredible, you know, this pace that all three of them are able to go as we look back to Matt Wright with a wild ride at La Carrière. Trying to fight back against Riley Wines, and I'm pretty sure after that long slide, Wines is trying to still nurse that rear tire a little bit more, since, you know, if you just keep running these tires at a very high temperature, you know, the heat degradation will just affect it more and more and more. Will become a very crucial thing. He knows that he has around 10 laps left, after this around 9 laps. So he's already, you know, gauging basically. Oh, and that's once again a big slide, this time in with the other corner of his rear end. So his rear tire is screaming for mercy, and I think he's now switching over to, well, the mode of nursing the car back home. But yeah, as we're looking at lap 19 now, we have Kasper Stolze in the lead for Rafa Racing Club. We have Niklas Kirsten in second for Amber Collective Autosport. Janis Simoncic with the number 1, our reigning champion from Carrera Mundial, the guy who scored the most points back then, in third place. Didn't have a great season so far, but could get back a third place in Zandvoort. Bernd Nobs holding up the Brabham flag in fourth place. Then there's Martin Bayer in the sole remaining Scuderia Favero in fifth. Franek Odrecki with his BT20 debut also for Amber Collective Autosport in 6th place. Then we have Austin Birchfield in 7th place with the British 43 for Southern Speed Factory. And last but not least in the points, we have Matt Wright, also in his BT20 debut. And the points positions in our Formula B class are Sendkowski and Salminen, who are still battling nose to tail, and actually we just... Ooh, there's a bit of a bigger gap now. So Salmon must have had a mistake there earlier. Sliding a bit wide, but regaining composure rapidly. And trying to close the gap back in, but yeah, it's crucial to keep up the rhythm here. And now, once again, you see the gap going down immediately. Sankowski is slightly overcooking it at the exit of that roller coaster section. Then Salmon now looking for the tails of his slipstream. Those two in P1 and P2. Matthias Estrella a little bit back in P3. And Oli Kayan-Lati in P4. He was fighting for the lead earlier, but I think had a bit of an off, but was able to carry on. Gerard Rion in 5th place in Formula B, then Filippo Marazzi in 6th, and Clem Fanango, our final Formula B runner, in P7, slightly back off, but that's still going to be points at this rate. Our cameraman quickly switching targets there. Definitely working better than Fernando Alonso when he quickly changed careers after his McLaren Honda broke down. Just watching Larry Salmon a little bit more. Who's still trying to close that gap, and you know, with the same car, with these cars, 444 kilos, as I mentioned earlier, 218 horsepower out of a 1.6 liter inline-4 engine. So, you know, they basically made a big regulation change to this year as well from 1966. 66, they still had the Formula 2 rules that were basically meant to accommodate the 1.5 liter Formula 1 engine formula. So F1 was 1.5 liters. They had around 220 to 240 horsepower in Honda's case. And afterwards they had, well, Formula 2, they had 1 liter engines, basically completely race prepped. I think around 140, 150 horsepower, pretty much peak power. But 1966 they realized with Formula 1 getting so much quicker, you know, having the German Grand Prix there, that they had to make a change to the Formula 2 formula as well to make sure that they were actually proper preparations. And there is Matt Wright, actually, speaking of increased speed in Formula A. Well, Formula 1, Formula A, it is a similar thing. Making his way past Austin Birchfield. Birchfield getting a little bit tail happy at the exit of that should be Blanchimont, yes. There we are, we have Austin Birchfield here trying to get past Zankowski. Yeah, just ooh. And he's still, oh my goodness, yeah, actually, so he barely keeps it from spinning actually in the middle of that corner, you know, just slightly, you know, when you try to brake there, you know, the tires load up slightly inopportune. You know, you get a tiny bit of a waggle to the left, goes on the inside grass, barely able to keep it out of the wall. So well done, Austin Birchfield. But of course, it cost him, as he's now making his way past the Formula B cars once more to try and regain that position from Matt Wright. But also through that incident, we've got a battle for P1 again in Formula B. So Larry Salmon back into sniffing exhaust fumes of the car ahead. Really, really close together. Burnhamville, one of the, I would say, one of the most frightening corners in motorsports history, quite honestly. Incredibly close as Zankowski gets a bit of a tail. Oh, Salmon barely able to avoid that. Now they're too wide down the Master Straight. And here comes Bayens through the middle of the pack, splitting the FB cars with the absolutely humongous H16 engine roaring at 10,000 RPM. Into Master King, and my goodness. You want a spectacle on track, these do not disappoint, and I think also for the drivers it's quite a spectacle as well. But they're still going, still fighting. Going through Stavelo, the slightly banked section. I think this year they actually started putting up the old advertisement banners there again, on the outside of the corner, to give a bit of the circuit history a bit of an homage. But on the run now to La Carrière. Once again, for the 20th time for them. From behind also there's this orange Amici Hooper that should be, that will be the car of Danny Verman. Out of the corner with a big slide. The Hooper also with a huge upgrade from last round to this round. Last round the T81, now the T81B. But besides that one letter, it also shed around 60 kilos of its overall weight and got a new engine, now producing 390 horsepower instead of 360, as opposed to the old one from 1966. So still a little bit of a heavier car, but now actually a little bit lighter than the Beagle that is currently leading the race. These cars are very, very different from each other. There's Austin Birchfield once again, very, very careful, cautious on the throttle. Also maybe a little bit out of the optimal ref band, so not quite able to put a lot of torque down. Very narrow operating range for this H16 engine, but it helps you put down power, in moderate amounts, keep wheel spin from happening, and up into third gear, up into fourth gear after Radion. Now making chase again for the lightweight car of Matt Wright. Up Camel, not quite as straight at these times. It's more of the Camel, chicanes, Camel S's. Into Lecombe. And now the way, once again, we're separating ourselves from the location of the main racetrack, of the real, permanent racetrack nowadays. So running down to Burnhamville. It doesn't look like it, but this is all the way downhill, so a very, very steep decline here. A lot of room for these cars to pick up speed. As he's through Burnhamville, taps the inside shoulder a little bit too hard. Now touches a little bit of grass on the inside as well. Tries to keep the car as inside as possible. Careful not to overcook it, Austin. Goes through the roller coaster section there just fine, and now onto the master straight, and now unleashes all 16 cylinders. Shift is just under 10,500 RPM, which is the safe RPM that this engine can run. 300 kilometers an hour. It goes up to 305. Let's see how fast he can go. 308, 309, 310, and 311. Just a moment before braking, shifting down one gear for the Master King. There's actually a chicane. Wonderful. Flying past the house on the outside, which nowadays is a fry shop. So if you ever get hungry around there, and after crashing here in R Factor 2 or any other simulator that has this track layout, you can basically go, well, I got cooked here once, let's get something to eat here in real life. Going through Stavelo once again, going past the billboards. Long banked corner coming to an end, now once again in the realm of the H16 ref band. Up to 10,000 RPM and going up to the switch to second gear now. There we are. And look at that gap come down. He has to do one more shift than Matt Wright. All other cars are basically in 5-speed gearboxes. Only the H16 cars have 6-speed gearboxes, so they have to shift a little bit more, but also, they have a slight bit more of a dynamic range that they can adjust these gearboxes to suit their driving with. But look at that, now in the power bands, in the slipstream, and here comes Austin Birchfield now looking around the outside for that King, but looking for the inside of Blanchimont, but he's not quite close enough to make it work. Matt Wright positioning himself very, very well to keep any sort of moves from happening, and catches a bit of grass on the outside. Keeps it together though. Birchfield with a way cleaner exit out of Blanchimont than a couple of laps ago. Through Clubhouse once again. Both of them staying very clear off of the barrier of the right-hand side. And once more down the front stretch after La Source, and this is really where you can always see, you know, this is the part where the BT20 has its strength, and next up is the part where the P83 has its strength. Up the hill, you know, I weigh 200 kilos more than you, buddy, but I will put this 100 horsepower advantage on the road, says Austin Birchfield. And yeah, just look at that gap, slowly but surely sink a little bit by bit, but also again, you know, in the braking zone, he has to be a bit more careful. Far heavier car. We can also hear a second H16 not too far behind. That's still Riley Wines, who dropped back a tiny bit compared to the runners at the front. He's just letting it go a bit easier, I think. He's taking the wait and see approach. Slide down through that right-hander onto Master Straight once again. This is the bigger gap that they had in between them for a while. That would be Rebecca Celadon making his way past making his way past the FV car. Now this is an interesting part because Celadon in the Yonder RA273, modeled after the Honda of the time. So this is a 3-liter V12 powered car, so a lot more power, but one thing that you'll also have to note here, that car weighs 300 kilos more than the Formula 2 car. So 742 kilos of curb weight with 390 horsepower, powering that car down the straights. Nielsen Koski managed to open up the gap quite a bit again. So Salmon in the middle of Bernaville was actually thinking, well, get out of my way, buddy, you're slowing me down, but at the same time, you know, Celadon on the straights, huge power advantage, but in the corners, obviously, that weight will slow him down quite a bit. So we still watch Salmonen down the Hollowell straight. From behind, that should be, if I see it correctly, that should be... Yeah, that is Darren Andrews in the next H16 car behind Larry Salmonen. But once again there, we have a closer gap. Birchfield once again, this time close enough to make it stick. Wright brakes a little bit earlier, lets Birchfield take that corner. Probably thinking, well, we're in my strength part right now. But I know that we'll get into your strength part in just a moment, so maybe just give me Slipstream after we are through my strength part. Hard fight between the two. 4P7, so fighting between 2 or 1 points for this round. Meanwhile, at the front, we also have one of the quite prominent members here of Rafa Racing Club, Jane Simoncic, who is now broken into the 29th for fastest lap of the race. Also closing in on Nicholas Kirsten, but our eyes are currently still locked on Birchfield. Still defending on Matt Wright, but just as Matt gets a look around the side of that huge engine, there comes the power band, and that power band is quite a lot, well, it's narrower, but far higher than that of, well, what is essentially a 10-year-old engine at that point, because the Repco 620 engine of the BT20 built on an Oldsmobile engine block that was 10 years old at the time, with single overhead cam technology with 2 valves per cylinder. So really at that time, you know, where you already had 3 or, well, the mainstay was 4 valves per cylinder, you know, feeding fuel and all that. A very, very insanely old, an insanely old technology at that time. But yeah, nevertheless, we've got Simoncic still slowly making the distance smaller and smaller. I think maybe Kirsten has overdriven it a little bit, trying to catch back up to Stolze. Or maybe Simoncic is just going, well, I let it take on easy long enough. It's about time that I actually start pushing a little bit. Half a second. No, there, our delta was bugging a little bit there. 1.5 seconds. And still closing. No differences in car there. Only the difference in driver and the difference in setup. So Simoncic closing slowly. Slowly. But with 5 laps to go now. With 5 laps to go, that is definitely the time where he has to be closing. Well, the real-life Grand Prix was won by Dan Gurney in one of the Eagle Westlake T1Gs. Well, as he just liked to call it, the Mark 1. So the T1G and all that, that was basically just what it got called by the press. He just called it the Mark 1. And the IndyCar equivalent, which was almost the same in construction, was the Mark II, and then they started building further and further after that. But only one F1 car of that series was made, so Mark I remained alone with the Westlake Type 58 V12 engine in the back. Produced a peak of up to 418 horsepower later on in this season, but around here it produced just around 400 horsepower. 580 kilograms overall in weight, and it was, I think it's one of 2 wins, one of 2 Grand Prix wins that was actually achieved with a truly American-built engine and car in, well, Grand Prix racing in general. I think the only other time, I just read up about that yesterday, I think was in a Duesenberg in Ramsjö in the 1920s. So, yeah, very historic here, and the Beagle drivers are definitely honoring that memory very, very well. And Riley Wyans is out, I think. That is a very, very big off. No, he's still in. But he is out of the points, I'd say. He's, well, was already anyway, but he's just lost touch with his teammate, and with Matt Wright. Also got passed by Danny Verman. Having a quick replay here to see what happened to him. So Verman closing in. And just gets a little bit wide. Barely misses the wall on the outside. And doesn't really touch anything, but obviously, you know, just a frontal hit, but that's not too bad in the grand scheme of things, you know? That's going to be a little bit more drag. It's going to reduce the straight line speed a little bit. Maybe mess with the radiator a tiny bit as well. But overall, that shouldn't be a too bad situation for Wyans. He got it off very, very easy there, considering what was at stake in that situation and at that speed that he was going off. Matt Wright still all over the back. Once again, they're going into Burnhamville. Absolutely insane. Over 220 kilometers an hour that they are doing here. As we have these guys quite close together, the gap also is shrinking between Kasper Stolze and Niklas Kirsten, and between Yannis Simoncic and Niklas Kirsten, so the top 3 are slowly inching closer together. 1.1 seconds now. Simoncic definitely has him in his sights now, looking for the slipstream, looking to get it done. And even though it's 4 laps to go for these men right here, you know, it's never over until it's really over. 400 kilometers in the Belgian countryside, and nevertheless, we're still getting moves done in the final couple of laps. No DRS, no wings, no hybrids, no V6 turbos, and no traction control or ABS or power steering, just all brute force. And despite all of that, they're still racing hard, still racing on the edge, which you can see here the onboard with Simoncic. Trying to keep it tight through Burnhamville around the exit. Now trying to get to the left as far as possible. Get the smoothest run through the right-hander. And that looks pretty good to me. The hundreds are tumbling down. Goes within a second now. So just on the outlier, around the outlier of Slipstream. But here comes also a little bit of gearing difference. And that is, it's such a shrill sound there, just under the 11,000 RPM that the car can handle. Revving around 500 RPM, 1,000 to 500 RPM higher than most of the other cars here. And yeah, that was a little bit of a scuffle through Master King. Now down Holloway straight, he lost a little bit again. So Simoncic really trying to close that gap now in the last closing laps. Coming in closer and closer, but Kirsten also letting him know, well, I won the first round. For the second one, I did damage limitation. For the third one, I'm pretty sure he received another podium there for his efforts. So Niklas Kirsten so far without any weakness in the championship, so to say, except for his damage limitation run after a collision in lap 1 at Monaco. And even then, a good points result. He'll definitely retake the lead in the championship after this round with this result, if he can bring it home. And I think even with the next one, he could still stay in the lead. Simoncic very, very close in the end. Everyone's trying to keep it together. At this point, there will also be not just mental, but also physical exhaustion. Another thing that you have to look at here is, as I said, we don't have power steering or anything remotely like that. But, yeah, we have even more bumps as well. You can see that there, how uneven the tarmac is, and we have Kirsten closing in on Salmon again for the next lapping maneuver. I think that should be the gap now 2 laps down to the leaders of Formula B. And Kirsten, 29.2, new fastest lap, despite lapping someone in the final corner. And yeah, just getting an absolutely phenomenal run through that final sector there. And yeah, no wonder that Simoncic was losing a little bit of a gap there. But these guys are still pushing, Kasper Stolze also improving his personal fastest lap to 31.72. These guys are absolutely wheeling like gods right now, using the V12 and every last one of their kilos, trying to fight the G-forces of those kilos afflicting themselves through the corners. Absolute insanity. And Bert Nobbs, despite being that far down on power, with 335 horsepower compared to the 400 of the Beagles and the 390 of the Favero of Martin Bayer behind, Nobbs using the strengths of this car to his absolute advantage, keeping a very, very clean race throughout the entire time. And running properly throughout the entire section here as well. Can almost carry 200, yeah, just over 230 through Burnhamville. As we're watching Martin Bayer, also from a little bit further back in the grid, basically one of the guys that was just playing the waiting game here. Had very good pace in practice before this race weekend, but couldn't quite put it on the track, so probably a bit more of a conservative approach. He knows how it is when you are slightly overcooking literally anything around this circuit, and it just hurts. Because these cars, if you have to go to the reserve car for the next round, that does hurt quite a lot. Simoncic now slowly within a second. 7 tenths, then just 6.5 tenths. And still, actually, keeping, that is super long gearing, so keeping it in 4th gear still in comparison to Kirsten already in 5th. Andrews also making it past Wyant in the meantime, after that big slide. So Darren Andrews also coming from, I think, the mid-30 positions, starting to gain the majority of the Formula B grid to go into the top 10 now. So a fantastic recovery drive from Darren Andrews, even if it's just outside the points. And yeah, these cars, once again, rare situation of exact same car, only difference are the driver. And actually, I think this should be the same setup as well. Because all these guys in the GBR, they are all, you know, they're sitting in different teams, but around here, HRSC, very, very communal mood. It's not, you know, like the extremely, you know, hard esports leagues, for example, where you have, you know, oh, I can't give you my setup secret, you know, it would give you an unfair advantage against me. No, these guys are very much, you know, always looking to help each other, trying to help each other enjoy the car more and get more pace. We have Matt right here with a big slide. Austin Birchfield with a big slide, but right with an even bigger slide through the roller coaster section as Simoncic slowly closing into striking distance. Ever closer. Couldn't quite match the fastest lap of Kirsten, but after that fastest lap of Kirsten, he dropped a little bit in speed. Just 2 more laps to go. 5 seconds now behind Stolze, so I think Stolze is taking it out of it a little bit now. Trying to stay a little bit more within the limits of the car. Maybe also after 26 laps of pushing, the tires are also getting to the point now where they're saying, okay, no, please take a little bit load out of us, otherwise we can fail mid-corner. Something very real that was a threat back in the day. But our eyes are all on these two through Burnhamville. Simoncic looking slightly on the inside of Nicholas Kirsten, both of them going through there. 240, 230 down again to keep it tighter. 240 kph before lifting off, slight dab on the brake into the right-hander. And a big slide again for Simoncic. So he goes over 10,000 RPM, over 280 kilometers an hour. And comes to the 5th gear now. And closes in. There we are, 315 kilometers an hour. Behind Kirsten in the Slipstream, 317. And 18 before braking here for a moment, shifting down a gear. And Kirsten is looking in his rearview mirrors, you know, he's looking at the lap counter. He knows it's only 1.5 laps to go. He knows how tight it's getting. And it's now or never for Yannis Simoncic. Final lap coming after they complete this one. This man has been on the 3rd step of the podium before. Nicholas Kirsten, ironically also the man standing on the 2nd step of the podium last round next to him. But look at them go. Still in 4th gear, so Simoncic really running it as the 5th gear, really only as as a point of, you know, last resort, so to say, when he's just going into the unsafe rev range. Still 3rd gear now, up to 4th gear again. And here comes the Slipstream, here comes the power. Over 280 kilometers an hour. Almost, now there we are, there's the 5th gear in the final kick. Looks to the inside, they're side by side, coming to Blanchimont. But Kirsten, bigger on the brakes, more courage on the brakes. Stays ahead barely, coming to Blanchimont proper now. Through the 2nd left-hand and now to the clubhouse corner. And that's a second class car there. That is a Formula 2 car up ahead. And oh my goodness, that is Filippo Marazzi. So both of them just backing off for a moment. Both of them looking for the right side. Yannis Simoncic not quite able to get to the point of trying to look for the outside into the braking. But Kirsten goes deep. Kirsten goes deep, in fact. And a bit worse on the acceleration. But Kirsten's gearing is a bit set up better, I feel. Simoncic has the tighter line, but now side by side down into a Rouge, into the final lap. Kirsten goes harder on the brakes, barely able to stay at up Radillon. Final lap is going, but these men are fighting like it's for their lives. Kirsten now trying to keep it a bit tighter. Yannis Simoncic using all of the track and more to keep running, to keep up with Nicholas Kirsten. Gap is is going smaller. Going underneath a 1/10 of a second. Yannis Simoncic looking for the right, looking for the kink before Lecombe. Not quite able to get alongside there just yet. Has to do it later. And now through Lecombe. Now going through the Haute de la Côte chicane down to Burnhamville. It's now all the way downhill here in a non-metaphorical sense. And Birchfield Austin Birchfield crashed in the final lap, or 2 laps ago. Oh, and that is a big one. That's 2 wheels missing, so that must have been around the back of the circuit. So that's a DNF back towards... Our eyes go back towards the front, though. Nicholas Kirsten trying everything. Janis Simoncic trying even more, trying to get that car at higher speed through there. 6 seconds behind the leader. And another yellow flag in Sector 2. That's cleared up again. But here comes Janis Simoncic. Slipstream looks to the left. Looks for the inside of Master King. 370 kilometers an hour. And this time... Oh my goodness. And Kirsten barely leaves him the gap there. Simoncic backs out again. My goodness, when will he make that move? Can he make that move stick? That is the big 2 questions right now. Now down the Hollowell straight, closing in again. Closing in at incredible speed there. 315 kilometers an hour as they go on the brakes for Hollowell. Once again, the wall just on the outside. Now going through Stavolo. Slightly banked corner, down to 3rd gear for Janis Simoncic. And the big slide, loses a bit of momentum there as he touches the grass and has to get off the throttle for a moment. And now he only has La Carrère to go. La Carrère, last little section there where he can properly put down the throttle, can collect Slipstream. Now comes the first one over the front porch of this man's house. Simoncic catches all of the grass as well, stays on the throttle, keeps it straight somehow. And Nicholas Kirsten a little bit deep now with a power slide. Janis Simoncic goes deeper, though. Goes even deeper. Catches some grass. And has to lift off even more. And the gap has widened. We're coming around for the last time. Just up ahead, we have Kasper Stolze going into the first and second section now of... Oh, Blanchimont. That was one car in Sector 3 that just retired. I think that was Darren Andrews, I think. So the GBR-powered cars having a very heavy hit to them in the end. On quite literally the last 2 laps. Losing 2 of their 4 contenders. But Kasper Stolze, this man has not been beaten. No mistakes set. Just driving it home, relaxed. Goes through La Source for the last time as in the background Simoncic with aggressive braking tries to get alongside Kirsten but can't quite make it. Stolze wins in Belgium. Followed by Nicholas Kirsten getting his 2nd P2 in a row. Janis Simoncic gets his 2nd P3 in a row. And it's a Beagle Day. 1, 2, 3 for America. Absolutely fantastic racing by everyone here. We have Neil Zankowski, our leader, for, well, quite literally the entire race. Also in a very, very open battle with Larry Salmonen, who's now 7 seconds behind. So finally a little bit of a reprieve for Zankowski. Goes through Blanchimont for the last time. Or actually Club Corner already, so he's also going faster than anticipated now. But yeah, La Source for one last time, and Nils Zankowski brings it home for Wilksport in the EVE MS7. Very good for his championship aspirations in Formula B. Crosses the line in first. Fantastic job. Next up we have Larry Salmonen 7 seconds behind, also already on his way down. Waves to the crowd, wiggles with the steering, and crosses the line in 2nd place. Next up would be Matthias Estrella, that's 30 seconds behind. Through Club Corner here. And coming in there. There we are, last time into La Source, and you can see that proper dip in the road as it goes downhill. Down the straight one last time. 2 laps down in the end, the Formula B cars to the Formula A cars, so still quite close in pace comparatively over these entire 400 kilometers. Fantastic job. Terramar celebrates a 3rd place with Matthias Estrella. Now we still have a couple people running. Matt Wright, for example, in 7th place. Our camera fittingly on him. There's no rush for him here. Just slowly making his way home. All of his competitors have, basically not really strung along until the end. Heavy fight with Austin Birchfield for a very long time, but unfortunately in the end, big crash for Birchfield just at the end. So Matt Wright is able to celebrate a 7th place. Only Clubhouse Corner to go. makes it masterfully, survives it, and into La Source one last time as well. And that's P7 for Matt Wright once again. This time the first time with points in his full 3-liter car after driving an an Eve MS7 chassis with a 2.8-liter engine. Gets across the line, and that is one happy chappy, I would say. Behind him, Danny Vorman, after an early pit stop for damage, makes it back home into P8. Splendid drive from him, a very good recovery drive, and still a point result. Not quite as many points as they would have hoped for the Hooper manufacturer, and especially Hooper Amici Autosport. But nevertheless, very good result in the end to catch one last point. We have only a few people left to finish. There was Kasper Stolze once again, our winner, actually finishing the race just over 2 minutes or just under 2 minutes faster than the real life race was. In the end, the fears of the rain were unwarranted, so to say. Here we come with Formula A results. Kasper Stolze brings it home in P1 for Rafa Racing Club, then Niklas Kirsten, Amber Collective Autosport, and Yanni Simoncic, also for Rafa Racing Club, the three Beagles on the podium. Bernd Nobs for Brabham Motorsport gets it home in P4. Martin Bayer in P5 for Scuderia Favero. Then Franek Goderecki in the Amber Collective Autosport car in 6th place, also for the first time in the BT20, followed by another BT20 privateer effort by Matt Wright. Then Danny Verman in the new upgraded T81B. Then Riley Wyans in the first and I think only finisher of the H16 powered cars, and Darren Andrews, our last DNF that we got. And actually Baka Celadon, lap behind that as well, unfortunately not able to get in there. Actually, no, we have Mifan Floor behind that as well, just finished the race. Mifan Floor in the T81B as well, then Darren Andrews, then Austin Birchfield, our last 2-lap DNFers. Then David Baka Celadon in the heavy Yonder, followed by our first of the Formula B cars, Nils Zinkowski, Larry Salmonen, and Matthias Estrella, forming the podium with fantastic drives each. Oli Kajan-Lati with a really good drive as well, followed by Gerard Rayon, Filippo Marazzi, and Clem Fandango hanging on for the survival. Chas Kala, Robin DeVos, Quentin Chavato, Reese Gardner, Tom D, Steff Hermans, Giovanni Centorame, Becky Eli Clark, all DNFs, but here we have the pure Formula B standings again. Nils Zinkowski, Salmonen, Estrella, then Kajan-Lati, and Rion. All only 2 laps down, then Filippo Marazzi, or 1 further lap down. Fandango playing it more conservative, trying to get points home for Bofield Engineering, and Chas Kala, of course, in that very, very unlucky accident. I think it was at the exit of Blanchimont. Then followed by Quentin Chavato having an issue as well related to frame rate issues and crashing it. And Steff Hermans also unlucky in the end. Giovanni Centorame, big crash early on in the race. Well, yeah, pretty much 7 laps in after fighting for the lead. Becky Eli Clark also quite fast at the beginning, but also unfortunate enough to get caught out in the crash. Yuka Nerhi and Jennifer Shamai also very, very unlucky. Jacopo Di Gentile also very unlucky on lap 2. And Declan Brush, Chris Okuda, Oliver Day, and Jonathan D, of course, our huge wipeout from lap 1. So very, very unfortunate situation here. But first of all, we are getting our interviews here. And the first one we have here is Niklas Kirsten, who didn't come first, but came second, but also second time in a row. Niklas, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you. Quite an interesting race for me towards the end, with the journey closing in the final laps.
Overall, did you expect Kasper to have that kind of pace throughout the race early on, or?
No, I didn't really expect it. But yeah, when I saw that he was quicker, it was kind of okay for me to let him go. I just concentrated on staying on the track, staying safe, and collecting the most points as possible for the championship.
Yeah, and I mean, in the end, consistency is key. I'm pretty sure, if I'm not incorrect, you should be leading the standings now again after the report window is over. Overall, how are you feeling with, how the race went overall? Like, would you say that there was something where you should have gone a bit better, where you should have been a bit faster, slower? Any mistakes that you made that you think if you hadn't done them, you could have taken away the win, maybe?
Yeah, maybe I could have risked it a little bit more when lapping the Formula B cars, but yeah, as I said, I was happy with collecting good points, and also towards the end, the rear of my car became quite loose on low fuel, so I had to be a bit careful, especially in the middle speed corners where it was the worst. Yeah,
having to conserve tires as well, one of the big challenges, and also, of course, being quite frankly in the middle of the pack, having this 400-kilometer race distance. What would you say the biggest challenge is overall, like through this, far bigger length that you normally have over this entire race distance compared to modern racing?
I think the race was over quite quickly, at least it felt like it. Yeah, for example, Sanford felt a lot longer. Yeah, but the laps just flew by, and yeah, I really was a bit stressed in the last couple of laps. That was really nerve-wracking with Jörne coming closer and closer. Yeah, but I was just able to keep him behind.
Absolutely, but didn't crack under pressure, brought it back home, and I'm sure still satisfied with a P2. So yeah, fantastic drive in the end, Niklas. Congratulations, and I'll let you celebrate now. Pop the champagne.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a good one. Next up, we actually do have the winner, his HRSC debut, his Formula A debut, and, well, his win debut. Kasper Stolze, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Very good, actually. I'm a bit sweaty, but at least I'm alive, and yeah.
Yeah, I don't think anyone can blame you for a bit of sweat, mate. That was masterclass driving. Well done.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, yeah, a really, really consistent run. You came in as a replacement for Ross McGregor quite late.
Yeah.
Overall, what would you say was your biggest challenge, like overall preparing for this?
To be honest, it was like getting the hang of how to overtake the Formula B cars, because it seemed like some of them were quite fast in some of the corners and others were not. So, like timing when you need to go on full throttle in order to pass them going out of the corner, that was quite tricky, I think, because the behavior of the cars are quite different. So yeah, that was probably the main thing. And then just get to learn the track, because this is the kind of track that if you don't send it, you are just 2 seconds off pace, but if you make a tiny mistake, you are dead, because the speed is so high at all times. So yeah, very challenging, but great fun.
Yeah, as you said, you don't really have any, how would you say, any safety zones here, as you said, if you overcook it a little bit. Best example, Master King, on the outside there's just a house wall.
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of people getting caught out there. What would you say, like overall, like in traffic and stuff, were you ever worried about the situation with, what if the FB car gets collected in these situations? Like, what was your biggest worry through the traffic, and then also, with the speed differences that you have from Formula A to Formula B, were you worried that you would lose too much time compared to the guys running behind you?
Yeah, in the last part of the race, I had 2 times where I got caught behind the Formula B, where I didn't really dare to overtake at the time I caught up to them. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna wait till we are through this section of corners before I pass. But I could see that the guys behind, they caught up like 2 or 3 seconds doing that. So luckily I had the gap to do so. But if I had been like, if the gap was smaller to the following cars, I would have to be a bit more what should you call it? I had to be more on it and take more chances, being a bit more risky. But honestly, it was mostly in the beginning of the heat, going through Master King. I was right behind the UNA, and he got very, very close to the building on the outside. So I was like, if he crashes now, then there are 2 dead Rafa cars. And also, during the qualifying, I had a lap where I was more than a second up on my own time, and then I caught up to a Formula B car in the last part of the track, and going out of the corner, I pulled to the inside, and it didn't really cost me a lot of pace. But as soon as I got to the inside, going out of the corner, there was some debris from a crash car on the tarmac that I couldn't see when I was right behind him. So I had a massive crash because of that, and that was like in the back of my mind throughout the entire race, that what if you could get around the corner, or when you overtake someone and there is some debris that you can't see. That was like, yeah, in the back of my mind all the time. Also,
yeah, absolutely.
Being a reserve driver, I really didn't want to crash the car, because then Ross in the next race would have to use a slower car. So that was a bit of pressure.
I mean, speaking of Ross, I think you did a splendid job. You know, Ross first raced in HRSC in Trans Am last year, actually also as a reserve for Rafa, because he was replacing for Jesper Pedersen, and also won his debut race in the end. So
nice.
You guys are doing something right, for sure.
I think that the UNA needs to find a different reserve driver for the next race then.
To get the team standings after all. But yeah, Kasper, thank you very much. Enjoy your victory champagne.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'll enjoy a victory shower.
But yeah, would love to see you on the grid again later on this season, since we have one more race at least where Ross is also not going to be there.
Yeah, I will definitely join if I get asked and I have the time. So yeah, it's been a pleasure racing with you guys. It's such a cool series. So yeah, I can only recommend it. Been great fun. Thank you.
Glad to hear it. Thank you very much, and have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Last but not least, we have our Formula B winner here, Niels Stankowski, the master of the little guys. Niels, can you hear us?
I can, yes.
So, how does the back of Lari Salminen's car look like, and when did you get tired of the view with Slipstreaming over and over again with you two challenging each other?
Yeah, it was a fun race. I think we were kind of both at the point where we were just driving together, really not trying to do anything crazy at that point. And then, yeah, with probably like 6 to 8 laps, I was kind of thinking that now it's time that if I have the pace to pull away, to try and do that. We kind of, at least I figured out where I was faster during the lap, which was mostly in the first part and La Source. So I kind of made first a move and then pulled away 1.4 seconds, had a bit of an awkward moment with a Formula A car, which destroyed that gap again. But at the second time of asking, the gap actually kept coming up and I could get the win.
Yeah, so one of the big difficulties, of course, trying to actually get the gap away, get out of the slipstream window for the car following behind, and keeping up the momentum, of course. And not only that, I mean, this was the first race that you guys did at basically full Grand Prix distance, the first of 3 times. What would you say is the biggest challenge compared to the normal Formula B races?
Honestly, it didn't feel long because I had Lari with me the whole time, and the first few laps also other guys after I fell back to P7 at the start. So it didn't feel long. I assume that at the Nordschleife, where you have a bit less rest with less straights, it's gonna be more difficult. Tire wear wasn't an issue here either. So I didn't feel it was that difficult today with the longer race distance.
So there's already some giddiness for Nürburgring and Pescara then next up.
Yeah, Pescara is a weird one because you have those 2 long straights and then the third side of the triangle, the twisty bits. So I've never driven the track. It's certainly going to be interesting. And
Yeah, I think that third side of the triangle is probably going to be where the F2 cars can probably challenge the F1 cars for overall pace, because you guys weigh so much less.
that could very well be. But once we get to the first straight, that should sort itself out, I guess.
But yeah, third win of the season. After the first race was a bit of a DNF, but fantastic drive. Thank you very much for attending as well, and I'm sure you're very happy with today. Enjoy some victory champagne.
Yeah, and thank you all for putting this up. It's always fun to race.
Always good to have you. Right, ladies and gentlemen, then this was it, the fourth round of the Open Wheel Racing Series Formula A and Formula B in 1967 with us, the historic racing sports community. If you want to join the races, you can join our Discord. If you want to just watch, well, you can also join the Discord, We have a lot of enthusiasts about historic racing around here. This broadcast would not be possible without our partners Genisus Extreme, who have provided this absolutely fantastic broadcast direction here with our very own Daniel Costello. And, I would say with our commentators as well, but today it was me. I was just there, and of course, thank you very much as well to to our Stephen Koenig, who jumped in at the very last second with some little clashes coming in at the end as well. Also, we have to thank our partners over at Gridfinder. If you want to join the races here, look us up on Gridfinder. We are one of the biggest R-Factor 2 communities on there, and I think one of the few ones actually bigger than us is the actual Formula E. So, yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in. Hopefully everyone is having a good rest of the weekend, and this was us. Rock on and stay safe.